We're learning new details about an incident that turned physical at Arlington National Cemetery during Donald Trump's visit there on Monday. It happened while Trump was in Section 60, the burial site for recent U.S. casualties. Trump suggesting on Truth Social that the problem stemmed from his campaign's use of photography. CNN's Elena Treen has more on that from Washington. What happened here?
Right. Well, Sarah, so a lot of back and forth from both sides, the Arlington National Cemetery, but also the Trump campaign on what exactly did happen. But what we know is that some people who worked at the cemetery had blocked members of Donald Trump's team, members of his campaign on Monday from attending and participating in some of the wreath ceremony when Donald Trump was laying some of the wreaths on Monday to honor the 13 fallen U.S. service members who were at Kabul's Abbey Gate during the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, I'm going to break down some of this for you. So the big question here is about whether or not Donald Trump was able to, participate in partisan events, as the cemetery calls it, while at that visit, particularly in this area called Section 30. Now, we did hear from Donald Trump. He posted, as you mentioned, Sarah, on Truth Social. And as you said, he did seem to argue that perhaps this was because of photography. This is what he wrote on Truth Social. And they also included a post or a letter from the families who said that they had supported this effort. He had said, quote, "We had given our approval for President Trump's official videographer and photographer to attend the event, ensuring these sacred moments of remembrance were respectfully captured, and so we can cherish these memories forever." And that is from the families of some of the service members who were killed during that Afghanistan withdrawal a couple years ago. Now, I will also add that the cemetery, for their part, had said in a statement to CNN that federal law prohibits political campaign or election-related activities at Arlington National at Army National Military Cemeteries, So that's where some of the dispute is here. Now, I will say NPR was the first to report some of this. They had said that they had heard from someone at Arlington National Cemetery who said that there was a physical altercation between members of the cemetery staff and Donald Trump's campaign. Trump's campaign has pushed back on that. They said that there was no physical altercation. However, a member did block them from participating in this. Now, we also did hear from Chris LaCivita. This is Donald Trump's co-campaign manager. He's also someone who is a veteran. He said, quote, "President Trump was there on the invitation of the Abbey Gate Gold Star families to honor their loved ones who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country. For a despicable individual to physically prevent President Trump's team from accompanying him to this solemn event is a disgrace and does not deserve to represent the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery." So again, Sarah, a lot of back and forth here. I do think the big takeaway is that this was a moment that, of course, Donald Trump's team, they recognized was a solemn moment. This was something to honor the family members of the fallen soldiers, and has been a bit tainted now by this dispute over whether or not Donald Trump had violated federal law by making this a political event. Sarah?
We also, beyond this, and that's Chris LaCivita's video there of him laying down those flowers. We also saw this very friendly interview with Dr. Phil and President Trump. What did you learn from that?
Right. Well, we've seen Donald Trump has sat with Dr. Phil before, and you're right. It is a friendly interview. It's always interesting to see him when he's sitting down with people that he feels like he can be more candid with, he's more comfortable with. That is kind of the vibe that we got from this interview last night. But at one point, Donald Trump did talk about his attempted assassination on him back in Butler in July, and he seemed to hint that he believes that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris bear some responsibility for that. Take a listen to what he said.
When this happened, people would ask, whose fault is it? I think to a certain extent it's Biden's fault and Harris's fault. And I'm the opponent. Look, they were weaponizing government against me. They brought in the whole DOJ to try and get me. They weren't too interested in my health and safety. I would be if I were in their position, but they weren't very interested. But they were always making it, from what I understood, and I could feel it, they were making it very difficult to have proper staffing in terms of Secret Service.
Okay, Sarah, so first of all, I just want to be clear that there's no evidence whatsoever that President Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris have tried to purposefully, make it more difficult as it relates to Secret Service staffing for Donald Trump. But the point about the rhetoric is something we actually have heard Donald Trump and many Republicans argue, that it was the rhetoric and the language that Democrats use against him that contributed to this person attempting to shoot Donald Trump. And so a lot to unpack there. I think you're going to probably continue to hear some of this. And as we know, as we move closer to November, a lot of these attacks are getting more personal, more nasty. And that's kind of where Donald Trump laid this yesterday.
All right. Eleni Trading, thank you so much.